Hey guys, Dan here, back from my home studio here, and we've got this week's movie reviews, 4 new movies for you, and a couple of pretty high-profile ones, and then some smaller ones. We start though with Greyhound. This was originally supposed to be a big theatrical Tom Hanks summer release, but of course with the pandemic, a lot of movies getting shifted to streaming services, and Apple TV bought this one. This was a big, big get for them. They haven't had any real big movie moments yet. They had that Beastie Boys documentary, which was great and very well received, but I mean, nothing quite on the scale of this. So, Greyhound is the first film we're going to talk about. It's based on a 1955 novel called The Good Shepherd, and I'm not sure if that has anything to do with the Good Shepherd movie that they did a few years ago. I didn't actually see it. But I don't think so. Looking at the Wikipedia page, it looks like the only thing that it got adapted into was this Greyhound movie. But anyway, it takes place in 1942 during the Battle of the Atlantic, which is just a few months after the United States' entrance into World War II. And basically, Tom Hanks plays this inexperienced Navy captain who has to lead now an Allied convoy being stalked by some Nazis in U-boats. And that's essentially what happens. The name of his character is Ernest Krauss. The ship is called the Greyhound, but its official name is the USS Keeling. And really, there's not too many people in this movie. I mean, there's, Hanks. It's Hanks and the crew, basically. There's a little bit of a bookend with Elizabeth Shue, who plays the wife. Well, maybe she's not the wife. Maybe she's just the love interest. I think maybe they talk about getting married. But she's only in 2 scenes. The bulk of the movie, which is not long. It's, for a war movie, it's actually a little bit like Dunkirk. It's only 91 minutes, which for a war movie, I always think is very short. If it's under like an hour and 45 hour, 50 minutes, that for a war movie to me is very short. Most of the real famous war movies we think of are 2+ hours. But, look, Tom Hanks has obviously a wonderful association with World War II ever since the Saving Private Ryan days, and has fought for the World War II memorial to happen, and all of these things. So he's obviously, very interested in these types of roles. Most of the movie, though, like I said, does take place on the ship. It's very action-based. I'm not much of a, snob when it comes to where I see a movie, whether it's, in theaters, in 3D, in surround sound, whatever. But my TV here at the house is pretty modest. I mean, it's not a big TV. It's certainly not like a 4K type of thing. It's got a Blu-ray player, but when you're watching something on Apple TV, it's never going to be the quality of Blu-ray. And so this movie actually seemed quite dwarfed by my little setup. I feel like on the big screen is where you really needed to see this movie, and so it's unfortunate that this is one of the casualties of the coronavirus shutdown, because I think this movie would have been a lot more impactful on a big screen, because it's shot very, very well. Let's see who directed this. Aaron Schneider? I'm not super familiar with him. Let's see what else he's done. Well, he won a Oscar for a short that he did, but yeah, I don't know much that he's done at all. Not much. He did cinematography for a couple 90s movies, but for directing, he directed a movie called Get Low, which I think I did see. It was Robert Duvall and Bill Murray. I think I saw that when it came out several years ago, but this is his first, real big budget movie. I mean, Get Low was like an indie comedy kind of thing. But I thought he did a real good job with, getting all these big action sequences, and sort of immersing the viewer in them. But as a result, and because of the short runtime, we don't really ever get to know any of the players in this movie, including the captain. I mean, it's funny because the movie mostly takes place from his perspective, and the things that are interesting about it, I think, the most are that we really get sort of an insight into the mind's eye of the captain, and what kind of struggles a captain in World War II or in any war really, might go through second guessing themselves and this kind of thing. So from that sort of aspect, I enjoyed this movie, but a lot like Dunkirk, because of its short runtime, we never really get invested in any of these characters because we don't know them. They try to do the little setup with Elizabeth Shue's character at the beginning, but it's like it's so forgotten. Like 20-30 minutes into the movie, you don't even remember Elizabeth Shue as a part of it, until the very end again. So it was definitely a mixed bag of a movie. Now, I did not think Dunkirk was all that great. I thought the praise for it was over the top. All the awards nominations, it was like, okay, enough already. Is Greyhound going to get that sort of reception? Probably not, because it's not Christopher Nolan. But to me, they're very similar movies. Now, we spend time, I feel like, in Dunkirk with several different groups of characters, and here, we spend a lot of time, really all of our time, with the Greyhound crew. So, all right, so it's a little more focused, I guess, than Dunkirk in that respect. And of course, Hanks does a good job. I mean, what can you say about his acting ability? It's always, on point, I think. He's had very few stumbles in the last, 25, 30 years, ever since he became an A-list star. But it just all didn't gel together for me like I think it should have. And if it were on a big screen, I feel like at least I could have immersed myself in the action sequences a little bit more than I could have here. So at the end of the day, Greyhound is a decent movie, but certainly far from great. I leave Greyhound with a B. Up next, we're going to talk about Palm Springs, and this is a movie that you can find on Hulu. This is one where I don't know if it ever was supposed to get a theatrical release. It premiered at Sundance in January, but I think pretty soon after that, Hulu bought the rights to it. So I don't think it was ever earmarked for a theatrical release. And so this is Andy Samberg and Christina, is it Milioti? I think it is. She's, the mom in How I Met Your Mother, and she's done a few other things. We see her from time to time. But this is essentially, one of these time loop type movies, Groundhog Day, Happy Death Day to You, Edge of Tomorrow, all that kind of thing. And basically, Andy Samberg plays this dude, Niles, who has been in this time loop for a long, long time. He wakes up every morning in the bed of his girlfriend Misty, who is cheating on him, and of course he knows this because he's seen it, time and time again. But it takes place at a wedding, and he sort of makes friends with this girl, Sarah, played by Christina Milioti, who is the sister of the bride, and she is cheating, the bride's husband, her sister's, to-be husband, she's cheating, with him. She's having sex with him. So, look, Niles knows all of this after being part of this loop for God knows how long. But he actually brings her into the loop with him, which he didn't want to do, but I guess the loop is through this cave kind of thing. And so she, slips in the cave to save him from the J.K. Simmons character, who Niles also caught in the time loop, and now every few days chases after Niles and tries to kill him, which is irrelevant because he still wakes up the next day. So that's the basic plot, but it's a time loop movie. You've seen these a lot, I'm sure. And I was thinking throughout this movie, I'm like, what makes a good time loop movie and what makes a bad time loop movie? And personally, this is a concept that I actually really enjoy. I can't think of too many movies that I really don't like that have this conceit, but of course some are better than others. Groundhog Day is obviously the pinnacle, but Edge of Tomorrow was really good, and I thought the Happy Death Day movies, both of them, were actually pretty good too. But I think a lot of it depends on the chemistry of the people involved, and here Samberg and Milioti have great chemistry. And in addition to that, when the movie starts, you're like, okay, this girl's kind of cute, she's, a little bit of a mess. She's sort of the black sheep of the family. But, he obviously sees some things in her because he's seen her, a million times or whatever in this same day. But us as the viewer, we're like, all right, she's kind of cool. But as the movie goes on, her character really develops into, a fully formed person with all of these, regrets and ideals. And Andy Samberg doesn't necessarily change that much because he's been in this time loop for so long, but she's new to it. And that is a little bit of a twist. Usually in these kind of movies, there's only one person that's involved in the time loop, and it keeps going and going. And here, he's intercepted a couple people along the way. And actually, there's a really nice scene later in the movie with the J.K. Simmons character, sort of. I don't like to give spoilers, so it's sometimes I pause my sentence because I'm like, I don't want to. How much is too much to say? But anyway, they have a very nice, touching scene about the time loop itself, and so her character grows a lot, and that's something we don't often see, because you don't often see somebody that's involved in the time loop along with somebody who's been inside the time loop for a long time. Russian Doll is another great example of this, the TV show on Netflix with Natasha Lyonne, because towards the end of season 1, she sort of makes a friend who is also in the same time loop. So I think they got in the time loop at the same time, unlike here. But anyway, this is a pretty fun movie, honestly. It's not hilarious. I mean, when I think of Andy Samberg doing, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Pop Star, these are fall-down funny movies. This is certainly something more subtle. It's not really knee-slapping comedy. There are some moments and some lines, that lend itself to that kind of humor. But this is definitely a more thought-provoking film, I think, than most of the things he's done prior. I mean, I never saw like Hot Rod, but the stuff he did on SNL. I mean, he's always very sort of jokey, satirical, that kind of thing. This movie is not that. It's definitely more emotional, I think, for anything that I've seen him do, and I think that the pair really do have good chemistry. I thought this was a real solid movie. And again, it's always nice to do something different with the time loop, but I don't know why, I don't know what about this, appeals to me so much, this conceit of the time loop, but I really, really enjoy it, and I like, it pokes a little bit of fun, like there's some winking at the concept itself. He when she finds out she's in the time loop, and this is in the trailer, so this is not a giveaway, but, she says to him, what's going on, and he's like, oh, well, this is one of those time loops that you've heard of, and it's like obviously sort of referencing Groundhog Day and things like that, and she's just like, one of these time loop things that I've heard of, so I don't know, the pair has really good chemistry. I really enjoyed this movie. I don't know, is it a B+, is it an A-? I think I will give it a B+, which means I really should give Greyhound a B-, because I think this movie is definitely more well done than just a little smidge up. But obviously, two very, very different films. I don't think it quite gets to that A- level of Edge of Tomorrow, or the A+ level of Groundhog Day, certainly. But I think it leaves its mark on the time loop trope that we've seen so many times. All right, so up next we're going to talk about Relic. This is a horror thriller movie, I guess you could say. More psychological horror, I think, than anything else. And it has, much like, Greyhound, very few stars in this film. Emily Mortimer is the main star. She plays Kay, whose mother, Edna, has some pretty bad dementia, played by Robin Nevin. And then Bella Heathcote as Kay's daughter, Sam, comes along as well. And essentially, they decide to hole up in the grandmother's house to kind of deal with this dementia. And already, like, when they get there, there's some weird stuff going on, but they attribute it to the dementia. But as we go on, there's other things at play here in the family home. So this is definitely one of those slow burn horror movies. Much like it reminded me a lot of Hereditary, I would say. And I think maybe because that's more family-oriented than something like Midsummer or some of these other ones, like The Lighthouse. That's like a slow burn, but there's no real family involvement there as there is here and in Hereditary. So I think that's sort of the easy go-to comparison. But I'm really lukewarm on these slow burn horror movies. I think some of them are done well. I liked Hereditary. I liked The Lighthouse a lot. And then there's others that I don't really care for much at all. Like, I didn't really like The Witch. I hated Mother, the Darren Aronofsky movie with Jennifer Lawrence. That was terrible. So I think it's a tough needle to thread, and it's proven time and again with the Rotten Tomatoes critics score versus the audience score. Like, for example, this movie is like somewhere like 90%, 89%, something like that for critics, and then for audiences is like 45%. And most of these movies are like that. Now, some are a little more hit or miss. Like Mother, I think, was only hovering around 70% for critics, which was still a lot higher than I think it deserved. But, critics really love to pick apart, the meaning of the movie and the metaphors and this and that and the other thing. And that's fine, but I think for general audiences, this kind of movie is tougher to deal with than people want to believe. They want to believe, oh, no, an audience can handle this, a slow burn. But people typically don't really want to see that. So I fall somewhere in the middle of that. This movie, I think, has some good things about it. First of all, Emily Mortimer is, she's just always so great. Everything she does is just wonderful. I recently saw Mary Poppins Returns again. She's great in that. Every time she pops up, she's just one of these people who is just, sort of cute and perky. And so to put her in this type of movie is certainly interesting. And I'm sure for her it was like, well, let's do something a little bit outside of my comfort zone, outside of what I'm used to doing. And so the movie ends up being essentially like a metaphor about dementia and mental health and that sort of thing. Which, I don't know, for a movie that is sort of more of a think piece than a traditional horror movie, I think they actually hit it over the head a little bit too obviously. Mother, I'll give Mother this. The one thing I think it did right was the whole religious metaphor stuff. It was still annoying, but but at least, I don't know, you didn't really know what was going on most of that movie. This movie, there's definitely weird things going on. You're like, okay, I'm not sure what this means or what this is, but they do the dementia as metaphor thing pretty consistently throughout the movie. I will give it that there's not a lot of jump scares in it. The acting is solid, but none of it really ends up coming together, and it is shot so darkly. I get that they're in an old house and it's dimly lit, but it's like, this is my biggest gripe about probably, I don't know if it's my biggest gripe about horror movies, but one of my big issues certainly with a lot of horror movies in the last maybe 10 years or so is that they try to use atmosphere, they try to use darkness as an atmosphere, and that's okay, but we, the audience, need to see at least something. Like, this movie is so dark, and again, I don't have a huge TV, I don't have a huge setup, so if I'm constantly like looking for like, okay, what room am I even in right now? That's not great. So I think that's something that horror movies need to sort of take a cue from and move away from that sort of thing. And like a lot of the movies I mentioned, The Witch and Hereditary and stuff, there's a big, conclusion scene that lasts maybe, I don't know if it's even 5 minutes. I mean, here's another, all these movies this week are very short. This one comes in, I think, at right under 90 minutes. Let's see how long, 89 minutes, yeah. So, I mean, and at least 6-7 minutes of that is credit. So really, there's only about an hour and 20 minutes of actual movie. And, we see maybe the last 4 or 5 minutes gives us the big climax, but is the payoff worth the slow burn? For this movie, I think it is not. I don't think it's horrible. I didn't feel like I necessarily wasted my time, but I definitely think it's on the more middling end of these types of movies. But the performances are all three of them are great. Bella Heathcote, I know the name more than I know the person. Let me see what else she's done that maybe I've seen. Neon Demon, I did see that. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. Dark Shadows movie. Okay, so she's done like a bunch of things that I've seen, but she's just sort of there, One of the 50 Shades movies. Okay, so, I mean, alright. But she does good in this. She does very well in this, and Emily Mortimer, of course, is great. And the grandmother, I didn't recognize from anything. But she does a good job too of really selling the whole dementia angle of having a good day here and then having a bad day the next mentally. So performance wise, it is good, but yeah, definitely more in the middle of the pack for me on a slow burn type horror movie. So I'm gonna leave Relic with a C plus, sort of in the middle there of the critics and the audience ratings on Rotten. And finally, we end. This is just a doozy, but I just had to watch it. I'm a Kelsey Grammer fan. I will watch anything he's in. And just the poster looks so ridiculous for this movie. It's called Money Plane. And just, okay, the name, forget the poster. The name, Money Plane. That's the movie. It's just ridiculous. But I knew it would be going in. I was hoping that it would be, sort of at least kind of some tongue-in-cheek fun, maybe in the vein of like some of those sci-fi, Sharknado type movies or whatever. And we get some of that, but I'm not sure this movie is quite as in on the joke as I had hoped it would be. Like when I hear Money Plane as the name, when I hear Denise Richards and Kelsey Grammer are involved, I think, all right, well, this is going to be a train wreck of a movie. And it really is, but I also hoped it would be kind of fun. And that's where it sort of gets me. Because in some ways it actually is. Like, basically the concept is that there's Kelsey Grammer plays this dude who, by the way, his name is Mr. Grouch. So right away you're like, okay, this is lame. Like, that's the worst named thing since Unobtainium in Avatar, So he plays Mr. Grouch, who is, surprise, surprise, the bad guy. But he basically recruits these criminals who were supposed to steal some art for him, and they kind of botched that job because the art wasn't there at the museum to steal. So he's like, okay, well, there's this thing called the Money Plane. And, all these rich people from all over the world go on it, and there's, a lot of Bitcoin-type currency, but there's also millions of actual dollars, and that's what I need you to steal for me on this plane. Darius Grouch is the guy's name. Come on. And so Adam Copeland plays the leader of this criminal, organization, whatever, Jack Reese. So he sends Jack and his cronies onto the Money Plane, and basically it's like a casino type thing where anything goes. One of the line Darius Grouch uses on him is, you can even bet on a guy effing an alligator. Now, I don't even know what that means. Are we betting that the alligator's not going to kill him? Like, what is the bet when you say you can bet on someone effing an alligator? So right away you're just like, this is a silly movie. They know it's silly, but the problem is the acting is so bad and the script is so just bizarre, and like, you can suspend your disbelief, but like, you need to basically, like, you've heard of check your brain at the door. Like, you need to lobotomize yourself to really like enjoy this movie, I think. And I really didn't hate it. I'm not going to fail this movie. I thought long and hard, pretty much throughout the whole movie. Like, is this a fail? Am I going to fail this? And the truth is, I'm not going to fail it because I think it is just insane enough that it kind of works for what it is on some levels. Like, I could definitely see this being a fun drinking game kind of movie. You can kind of lose yourself in it. But the acting from like the main people is all right. Like, Denise Richards can't act her way out of a paper bag anyway, so she stinks as always. But like, Kelsey Grammer's fine as the villain. He's a little bit over the top, but I think that's what they wanted him to be. And then this dude Copeland that's playing Jack Reese, he was fine, and some of his partners in crime are fine. But it's all of the other people, all of the supporting cast on the plane and doing the different bets and stuff. It's like they are, and it's not even just over-the-top acting, which in a movie like this I would expect. It's just purely bad acting. So I can't give it much more than a fail grade. But I have to admit, it was kind of fun watching it. It was interesting to see what the bets were going to be. And there's a mild twist that I think the the creators and producers really wanted you to be jaw dropping, and it's just kind of like, well, yeah, I mean that completely makes sense. So all of that combined to a very, very, very below average movie, but it is at least fun. I'll give it that. I don't think it really didn't embrace the corniness like I hoped it would. It really didn't embrace how silly the concept is like I hoped it would. But it was still, amusing to watch if nothing else. I wish the acting was at least a little bit better. I think I would have given it maybe more of like a C plus or a C minus or something if it had, at least competent supporting acting. But other than like the 3 or 4 main leads, and Denise Richards doesn't even count because she stinks. It's just the acting is so bad in this. So I leave Money Plane with a D. It is definitely better than the movies I failed this year, but I just, why didn't they embrace the campiness a little bit more of this insane concept of a movie, All right, so that's going to do it for this week. Next week, I don't know what we're going to review movie-wise. I know there's a couple new ones already on Netflix. Again, it seems like every 2 or 3 weeks I have to do an all Netflix show. I know in a couple weeks there's a big one coming to one of the main ones. It might be Peacock, actually, now that Peacock's up and running. I don't remember, to be completely honest, but I'll find some movies for you next week. But in addition to that, we have a ton of new content coming on the show or on the channel this week, because I've got my regular TV viewing, the news and review show. I've got the Peacock Is It Worth It review. Peacock debuted last week while I was away at the beach, so I'm going to really hunker down and watch all their new shows tomorrow and have a video for you for that. And then Merlin and I are getting together this week to do a new Disney video, which is going to be for Alice in Wonderland. We're going to finally start Freaks and Geeks Friday, which will be coming, I don't know if that'll be this week or next week, but we're going to review all the episodes of Freaks and Geeks, one of my favorite shows ever. And then, by that point, we're at next week already. Time for another movie review, time for another TV review, and all that kind of stuff. So, a lot of exciting things on the channel to look forward to. Subscribe, by the way, if you haven't already. I'm up to, I think, 465 subscribers, which is decent. I'd love to get to 500. That's obviously a huge milestone. But if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. But that's going to do it for the movie reviews for the week. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you back here next time.